What does the world get when two of Hollywood's biggest stars butt heads right before a live television audience? Well, hold on to your seats, because it just got real. Jennifer Lopez walked off The View's set after an explosive confrontation with the very hardly anyone expected Gwyneth Paltrow. And let's just say, no one in that studio saw it coming. This was not a typical celebrity feud. No, this was a full-scale war of words that pulled back the curtain on Hollywood's sugary sweet rivalries, brewing behind those perfectly painted-on smiles. Before we get into the tea, be sure to hit that subscribe button and leave a comment below. What do you really think actually triggered this? Now, let's get into the tea. It began on a tight Tuesday morning in Studio EA. Jennifer Lopez was set to come on for what would have been run as of-the-mill promo talk, an uneventful stand on her press tour. But as soon as she arrived on the set, it was apparent that this interview would be no cakewalk. The company hosts were just warming up to their normal chemistry when Gwyneth Paltrow, who was guest company hosting that week, steered the discussion in a way no one could have predicted or avoided. With that trademark cool, slightly superior tone, Gwyneth leaned in and said, "Jennifer, I've been watching your career lately, and I've got to say, I'm curious about some of your choices. It seems like you're chasing trends more than setting them these days." The atmosphere in the studio changed instantly. You could hear a pin drop. Even Whoopi Goldberg, well, she's witnessed more than her share of cringe-worthy moments, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Jennifer didn't blink. Her smile remained rock steady, but if you're familiar with J.Lo, you know that her eyes betray everything, and at that moment there was a flicker, just a flash, of irritation. "I apologize," she said, voice steady but strong. "What do you mean by that exactly?" Gwyneth, thoroughly enjoying herself, sat back in her chair with a knowing smile. "Well, have a look at your work lately. The music, the companies, even some of your movie roles. It seems a little reactive, doesn't it? Like you're just following along, not breaking any new ground." The other company hosts glanced at one another. This was heading somewhere very uncomfortable and fast. Joy Behar tried to break the tension with a joke, something to lighten the mood. But Gwyneth? She wasn't finished. "I guess what I'm really saying," Gwyneth began, her voice steeped in that familiar air of superiority, "is that some of us in this business have always put artistic integrity ahead of chasing big paychecks." She let that sit for a moment before adding, "And I've noticed that kind of thinking is becoming rare, especially among performers from certain backgrounds." That final statement lingered in the air like a heavy fog. The entire studio sensed the change. Everyone knew exactly what she implied, even though she hadn't actually said it. The tension was instant and palpable. Jennifer's jaw stiffened, her face tightening. For a moment, it seemed she might just blow right on camera some backgrounds. Jennifer repeated, slowly, her tone steady but glacial. "Seriously attempting to turn this into something about where I am from?" Gwyneth's lipless smile didn't waver. "Oh no, not at all. Never would I. I'm just discussing artistic taste. Some individuals are merely more attracted to higher forms of expression, whereas others, well, they opt for what sells." "Are you really attempting to turn this into something about where I am from?" You could almost sense the condescension spreading across the set. It was knife-cut thick. One of the company hosts, Sunny Hostin, appeared to wish she had melted under the table. Maybe Sarah Haynes kept glancing over at the off-camera crew, pleading silently for someone to intervene and shut it down. But Jennifer wasn't having it. "You know what, Gwyneth?" she said, her voice growing stronger with every word. "You got some nerve sitting there and preaching about authenticity when your whole brand is based on pushing overpriced junk to people who don't know any better." The audience gasped. This wasn't your usual morning show back and forth. This was raw, real, and it was spiraling fast. For an instant, Gwyneth's smooth poise faltered, but only by a flicker. She rallied fast and responded, "I don't understand what you're referring to, Jennifer. Goop has never been anything but about wellness, about empowering women to make educated choices for themselves in terms of their health and way of life." "Educated choices?" Jennifer retorted. "You mean like advising women to steam their private areas using herbs, or selling vibration stickers that are said to align their energy?" Jennifer didn't bat an eye. "Come on, Gwyneth," she said, her tone cool but acid. "If we're actually going to discuss authenticity, perhaps we should begin with your empire, based on pseudoscience and privilege." The drama in the studio was thick enough to cut with a knife. Whoopi seemed to be urgently looking for a way out of here, to turn the conversation somewhere else, but it was certain that both women were beyond the point of no return. Behind the cameras, producers were gesturing wildly with their hands, urgently signaling a reset, but it was too late. And then Gwyneth struck back, "Honey, at least I'm not clinging to relevance by dating guys half my age, and putting out music that sounds like it was written by a teenager. That cool, composed persona Gwyneth usually carried? Gone, gone," she snapped, and the entire studio felt it. A stunned hush swept through the room. Even the camera operators looked caught off guard. This wasn't your typical daytime spat. It had gotten personal fast. Jennifer's face changed rapidly, from shock to outrage, and then to something that resembled pity. "Wow," she whispered. "You really went there, didn't you?" And then she sat up a bit more upright. Her tone grew sharper, but not louder. "Know what this is actually all about, Gwyneth? It isn't about my music or my films or whom I'm dating. This is about the fact that you can't stand the success of someone like me, someone who wasn't born into a show business family, who didn't have a Hollywood godfather to smooth the way, someone who actually had to earn it." Gwyneth's face flushed. "That's not true," she shot back. "I've worked incredibly hard for everything I've accomplished." Jennifer gave a little sour laugh. "Hard work?" she echoed. "Is that what you call having Steven Spielberg as your godfather? Getting parts based on your name? Marrying a rock star? And then a Hollywood executive? That's your definition of struggle?" She leaned in just slightly. "Let's be honest. The only thing you've really worked hard at is convincing the world you're somehow above the rest of us." The whole group was stunned at this juncture. The rest of the hosts, Joy, Whoopi, everybody, sat there, eyes wide, mouths closed. What they were seeing was not merely a hot debate. It was an all-out, bare-knuckle fight between two of the industry's biggest stars. The studio audience didn't know whether to cheer or gasp. The majority just sat perched on the edge of their seat, some covering their mouths. Gwyneth, herself now clearly shaken, leaned forward, her voice dripping with venom and ice. "You want to discuss privilege?" she spat. "Let's discuss how you've built a career repeating the same role ad nauseum. The gritty Bronx girl who reached stardom. We hear it, Jennifer. You're from the block. Perhaps it's time you learn to add some range to your acting. It's tiresome. 30 years of the same character." That was it. You could practically hear the audience gasp. Some of the people in the front row literally covered their mouths with their hands, and Jennifer? She froze. Solid. If you know her, you know. That's when things get serious. "Legist, I actually have a personality that's my own," retorted Jennifer. Her tone is chilly as ice. "Every aspect of you is put together deliberately, from that phony British accent, which, come on, is here 1 minute and gone the next, depending on who you're addressing, to your so-called lifestyle brand that takes advantage of women who've got more dough than brains." That shot stung. Whoopi, attempting to cool down the temperature, finally broke in. "Ladies, perhaps we should all just catch our breath and—" But Gwyneth would not be interrupted. She interrupted Whoopi, her tone icy. "No, I think we need to discuss this." She turned back to Jennifer. "You're obviously intimidated by women who succeed through talent and smarts and not through, well, other things." Boom. The studio fell silent. Everybody knew precisely what she was saying. The insult wasn't coded. It was a straight shot, and it drained all the oxygen from the room. Even the normally boisterous crowd remained silent. They knew that they were seeing something real and uncut, something that was certainly not in the script. Jennifer jumped out of her seat so quickly that it scraped loudly against the floor. "Are you actually suggesting what I think you are?" she asked, voice soft and level, but you could sense the rage lurking just below the surface. Gwyneth shrugged, all affected innocence. "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just saying that in this business there are individuals who pay more attention to their image and their contacts than they do to talent." Jennifer let out a harsh laugh. Artistic merit? She echoed. You got an Oscar for a forgettable role in a movie no one talks about anymore, and you've been riding that one moment ever since. She didn't stop there. Meanwhile, I've built multiple successful businesses, sold over Tizzer's million records around the world, and proven myself in every corner of the entertainment industry. The rest of the company hosts were seated in stunned silence. It was as if witnessing a slow-motion collision. Nobody could turn away. Joy Behar seemed to be frantically hunting for a joke to diffuse the situation, but one never materialized. Sarah Haynes just stared blankly at her hands, wishing, quite obviously, that she was somewhere else. Gwyneth waved her hand dismissively. Quantity doesn't equal quality, darling, she said smugly with a little smile. Just because you've done a lot doesn't mean you've done it well. I mean, come on. Let's be real. You've always played it safe, Jennifer, Gwyneth said, her voice dripping with contempt. Your acting? Flat. Your music? Catchy, sure, but it's just commercial fluff. And those so-called businesses of yours? They're just celebrity product deals with your name slapped on the box. Jennifer's hands began to tremble. Whether it was anger or disbelief, or both, she clenched her fists to steady them. You know what's so rich, Gwyneth? She declared, her tone quiet but firm. You're sitting here dissecting my career when you're the one instructing women to insert jade eggs where the sun doesn't shine. The audience gave a collective whoa. You sell hazardous garbage to vulnerable individuals, Jennifer went on, meeting her gaze. And now you want to sit there and give me a lecture on integrity? My well-being brand benefits individuals. Gwyneth shot back, her tone defensive now. Jennifer didn't bat an eye. Your wellness brand is a scam, she told her. You've been sued repeatedly for selling bogus health claims. Actual doctors have publicly called you out for selling untested, unsafe methods. But sure, let's discuss my integrity. Yo. By now, the tension on set had turned chaotic. The producers working behind the cameras were virtually bouncing up and down, waving their arms, attempting to shatter the cycle. But neither of the women so much as looked in their direction. They were in a world of their own. And then Gwyneth struck the jugular. Say, at least I'm not hanging on to my youth by going out with men who are young enough to be my son, she answered icily. Seriously, it's pathetic, watching you attempting to keep up with Ursa somethings rather than gracefully aging. That was it. The last straw, Jennifer's face went white. Her mouth opened, slightly. For one charged, queasy moment, it seemed she might quite literally jump across the table. She didn't. Instead, she stood upright, her tone steady, but each word landed like a sledgehammer. You want to discuss humiliating? She asked, every syllable dripping with vengeance. Let's discuss how you couldn't even get divorced normally. You had to consciously uncouple. Because heaven forbid anything in your life ever sound like anything other than glamorous. The crowd was motionless. Jennifer wasn't finished. Let's discuss the fact that you named your daughter Apple and then pretended like that was some profound intellectual decision. Let's discuss the fact that you've spent years peddling this persona of being some wise lifestyle guru, when in fact, you're just a wealthy, spoiled girl who's never had to be held accountable for anything. And then, finally, for the first time, Gwyneth broke. Her perfectly constructed mask fell away. How could you drag my children into this? She spat. Her voice shook. At least I didn't use my relationships for publicity and then feign horror when they exploded in my face. Use my relationships? Jennifer's voice escalated, no longer checked. You literally published a cookbook on your divorce. Jennifer snapped. You leveraged your failed marriage as clickbait on your blog. And now you have the nerve to lecture me on exploitation? The room was totally silent. You could have heard a pin drop. This was not just a disagreement anymore. It was a complete meltdown. The audience was sitting there in stunned silence, a combination of shock and interest on their faces. Some people even had their phones up, respectfully disregarding the studio's strict no recording rule. Nobody wanted to miss out on this moment. I opened up about my healing so that other women experiencing the same pain could see themselves, Gwyneth replied, her tone now defensive, its vulnerability and authenticity. You should try learning about those at some point in time. Jennifer snorted in a sharp laugh. Vulnerability? She echoed. You'd not recognize vulnerability if it walked up and bit you on your gorgeous, perfect behind. Her tone cut harder. You've never had to fight. You've never had to struggle for anything. You've never had to prove yourself. You were born on third base, and you think you hit a triple. The barbs were becoming personal and nasty. Sunny Hostin glanced off camera toward the producers, her eyes nearly pleading for a commercial break, but this fight had taken on a momentum of its own. Nobody was going to interrupt. Gwyneth was not retreating. And you? She asked, her voice cold. You never had to learn actual talent because you discovered early enough that pretty and drama would carry you far enough. Your whole career is founded on being the pretty girl who can kind of sing and kind of act, but never actually have skill in either. Jennifer's eyes blazed with a rage so fierce that the air in the room seemed thick. Everyone naturally leaned back in their seats. You know what, Gwyneth? She ground out. I'm finished. I am so finished with sitting here as you sit in your ivory tower, looking down your nose at us like we're not good enough. She stood up now, her voice firm and solid. Want to know what success really looks like? It looks like beginning with nothing and creating something solid. It looks like logging Shrubot-hour days, day after day, to hone your craft. It looks like connecting with people, genuinely connecting, not simply selling them empty promises packaged in fancy trim. The tension in the studio was palpable. The air was so charged with feeling, it was difficult to catch breath. The rest of the company hosts traded uneasy looks. You could tell by their eyes. They realized that this had gotten too far, and they were unable to halt it. But Gwyneth wasn't done yet. She saw Jennifer at her limit, and rather than displaying grace, as she went on the attack, she was on a mission to destroy. Gwyneth relaxed back in her chair, her tone sinking into a still more condescending one, like she was going to give the verdict in some courtroom drama. Just so you know what I think about all this, Jennifer, she said calmly. You're so defensive. And maybe, just maybe, that's because deep down, you know I'm right. You've spent your whole career trying to prove you belong in the same rooms as people like me. But the more you try, the more it becomes obvious that you don't. The words landed in the room like a slow trickle of poison. Stunned, heavy, deadly. All work on set came to a halt. Literally, the audience was frozen. The crew ceased moving. Even the camera operator, in the middle of a pan, dropped the lens. Jennifer's expression changed quickly, from stunned to clearly wounded, and then to something much more potent. The kind of quiet anger that bubbles under the surface before it erupts. People like you? She whispered, her voice little more than a whisper. Did you just say that? She blinked slowly, nearly disbelieving. People like you, she went on, i.e., untitled, out-of-touch rich kids who feel superior to everyone else because they came from money, attended posh schools, and had famous family names? Gwyneth gave a smug, self-satisfied smile, as though she'd just won the contest, meaning individuals who recognize that success is not all about popularity or amassing wealth. She responded, silky smooth. It's about having taste, standards, sophistication, something not everyone can do. That was all. Jennifer had had enough. She stood so rigid, her mic pack almost took off her belt. Her chest was rising and falling with a slight heave. Her fists squeezed tightly at her sides. For an instant, it seemed she would toss her coffee mug across the table. You want to discuss standards? Jennifer spat, her anger barely contained, trembling in her voice. Let me tell you about standards. Her tone escalated, not shouting but strong, authoritative, angry, but still calm. My measure is treating people with respect and dignity, no matter where they are from. My standard is earning what I have, not having everything handed to me on a platter. My standard is using my platform to elevate other people, not tear other people down to elevate myself. She hesitated long enough for the moment to sink in. And your benchmark? She went on, holding Gwyneth's eyes. Apparently, it's being on national television and demeaning a guest because of her heritage. And yes, Because of her ethnicity. The term hit the air like a bolt of lightning. It landed so forcefully that the audience collectively gasped. Everyone knew exactly what was going on. This was no longer a shouting match. This had crossed a very significant line. Gwyneth's face turned white. Color vanished from her cheeks as the impact of what had been said and what the implications were struck her full force. "I never said anything about your race," she faltered, suddenly uncertain. "That's not what I was saying. That's not right." Jennifer didn't blink. "You didn't need to state it in so many words," she replied, unchanging. Jennifer didn't hesitate. "Everybody in this studio knows where you were headed," she snapped, "when you brought up your certain backgrounds and who can be in the same room with people like me. You can spin it all you want to, but we know where you were going." At last, Whoopi spoke up. "Ladies," she said softly, "I think we really do need to step back here." But Jennifer faced her with tranquil determination. "I'm sorry, Whoopi. I am really, but I'm not going to sit here and let her speak to me, as though I don't have the right to be where I am. As if I'm some sort of outsider who must have wandered into the wrong room. I've spent more than 3 decades in this industry. I've worked with the greatest in music, motion pictures, and television. I've created businesses, genuine enterprises, that employ hundreds of people. I've broken down barriers and opened doors for other Latinas in show business. So no, I'm not going to let some entitled princess who has never had to fight for anything tell me that I don't have a place here." You could feel the energy shift. Even audience members who'd been squirming in their seats a moment before were now completely caught up. Jennifer wasn't talking just for herself. She was talking for every human being who'd ever been underestimated or overlooked. Gwyneth attempted to reel things back in. "Jennifer, you're so dramatic," she said, trying to sound calm. "I was merely attempting to have a professional discussion about artistic decisions." Jennifer's laugh was acid-tipped. "Professional? There was nothing professional about anything you did here. From the moment I sat down, you attacked me. You attacked my talent, my integrity, my relationships, even my right to be successful. And you did it with that self-satisfied smirk, like you were doing me a favor by sharing your so-called insight with me." The other company host didn't say a word. They just watched in stunned silence. This wasn't just uncomfortable anymore. It was uncharted territory. "I think you're misinterpreting," Gwyneth began, trying to regain control. "I'm not reading something into it," Jennifer snapped, interrupting her. "I know exactly what this is. This is you trying to put me in my place. You can't bear the fact that somebody like me, somebody who started from scratch, has accomplished more than you'll ever accomplish. You can't stand that I've done it all through hard work while you've spent your whole life coasting on a famous last name and the right connections." Jennifer turned away then, walking toward the side table where her things were. Her movements were focused, every motion deliberate, and in that moment, everyone in the studio realized she was leaving. Unclipping her mic, she paused and looked back one last time. "You want to know the real difference between us, Gwyneth?" she said, her voice calm now, but firm and final. "I lift people up," Jennifer replied, her voice firm and unwavering. "I inspire people. I show little girls from the Bronx, from East LA, from every neighborhood that's been ignored or written off, that they can rise, that they can achieve their dreams if they're willing to work hard and stay true to who they are." She looked at Gwyneth, her gaze unshaken. "And you peddle overpriced rubbish to rich women and then make them feel inadequate if they can't meet your idea of perfection." Gwyneth's face was scarlet now. Whether from rage, humiliation, or both, it was impossible to say. "You're being utterly unreasonable," she fired back. "I was simply trying to discuss the industry in good faith, honest." Jennifer echoed, the word thick with incredulity. "Nothing that you said was honest. That was not a conversation. That was an attempt to humiliate me on national television because you thought you could do it." She hesitated, then spoke more quietly, with more intensity. "Well, congratulations, Gwyneth. You had your moment. I hope it was worth it." The studio was in pandemonium. Off-camera producers rushed around. whispering into headsets, attempting to find a way to save the segment. Some members of the audience applauded for Jennifer. Others sat paralyzed, stunned by what they'd just seen. But Jennifer had already made up her mind. "I'm not going to sit here and be disrespected," she said, now calm, centered, and full of determination. "I've been in this business a long time. I know when someone's trying to tear me down, and I'm not about to let you watch me fall." And then, turning to the camera directly, she spoke to the people at home with dignity. "To all the listeners who are tuning in today hoping for a respectful conversation, I apologize. You can do better than that. You can do better than hosts who show respect and dignity toward guests, not ones who use their platform to air grievances." Jennifer Lopez got up and strode off the set of The View, leaving behind flabbergasted company hosts, an awestruck audience, and one guest whose reputation had just received a very public bruising. The cameras rolled on. Gwyneth sat there quietly, taking it all in. But outside the studio door, the response was immediate. Social media blazed like tinder, overloaded with admiration for Jennifer. The clip went viral in a matter of hours. Millions thanked her for having the courage to speak out, to call attention to the veiled jabs. What many saw as classism and even racism spun into Gwyneth's remarks. And here we are today. So what do you think? Was Jennifer justified in storming off, or ought she to have remained and pushed back even more forcefully? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. No.